Chaos and order. In chaos lies the potential for order, and in order lies the potential for chaos. I believe knowledge of this concept is key to life. In history, we see the danger of too much order with people like Hitler. In sport, we see the same danger with real tennis. Real tennis was a sport that originated in France and was played by the rich in England. It had way too many rules, too much order, so that the illiterate lower class couldn't play. As a result, most people here probably haven't heard of real tennis, and there are only 50 real tennis courts left in the world. But real tennis was adapted with a bit of chaos. Rules were removed, and soon it became the successful sport we know as tennis. There was another sport known as mob football. The concept was that two towns would meet in a central location and try and get a ball to the end of the opposing town. It had very few rules, so you can imagine it was quite chaotic. Serious injuries were common. People would break into houses and steal. They would damage property. Sometimes people were even killed. Safe to say we hardly play this sport anymore. But we did adapt it with a bit of order. Rules were introduced, as well as a playing area, and soon it became the successful sport we know as football. I hope this starts to show how important a balance of chaos and order is, not just in sport, but in life. I believe that sports are a microcosm of life, and that if we analyze sports, we can learn lessons that will enable us to add the order that is needed to the potential chaos of our life. Everywhere we go, we function as part of a hierarchy, whether it's work, clubs, religion, or government, even in our relationships. Out of you and your partner, you will know who the better cook is or who the better driver is. This is because, as humans, we create hierarchies wherever we have a need for competence. Successful hierarchies ensure that the most competent people get the roles that are needed for the hierarchy to function at its best. But this is life, and we know that this is not always the case. I believe that sports can teach us how teamwork can help hierarchies be successful even when they're not handled in the best manner. Imagine a sports team where one player is a great leader. We'll call him Tommy. Tommy motivates his teammates when they're down. He gives them great advice when they mess up so that they improve. He leads by example. But when it comes time to select the captain of the team, the coach, instead of selecting Tommy, selects his son. And we can understand why he does this. He does this because he wants his son to be happy, not realizing he's just thinking short term. Tommy here has a choice to make. He can allow himself to become resentful and bitter. This will lead to him becoming demotivated. He'll stop improving and the team will stop doing as well. Everybody's long-term happiness will be negatively affected. Or Tommy can choose instead to not pay much attention to the coach's decision and instead to focus on doing what's best for the team. And in doing that, he will continue to try to do his best and continue to improve. This way, everybody ends up happier in the long term. There's two lessons that we can learn from this. The first is that when our goals are blocked or we perceive to have them blocked, instead of becoming resentful and bitter, we should focus on doing what's best for the team. Because in doing that, we are helping ourselves in the best way. The second thing we can learn from this is that every interaction we have in life is important. That coach's decision could have stopped Tommy, who maybe is a potential future Ronaldo, from playing football if he would have become demotivated and resentful enough towards the coach. Sounds extreme, but it could happen. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he stays in the team, but resentful and bitter, and this mentality spreads in the team. That's the downfall of the team because of that coach's decision. Tommy's parents and Tommy's teammates have an important role to play too, because if they focus on the negative, then they reinforce Tommy's resentment. But if they focus on the positive, then Tommy stays in the team, does what's best for the team, and does what's best for himself. Every interaction we have is important. And this is why sports also teaches us that communication is vital for those interactions to be effective. I'm going to give you an example that's not the best sporting example of communication, but I quite like it, so bear with me. I was teaching a class of 16-year-old boys football. They were playing a football match. As the striker got close to the goal, he got rugby tackled. Rugby tackled, we're playing football. So I know the striker's temperament. I run on over and I get between him and the rugby tackler. And he's getting up rather aggressively, the striker. And I keep repeating to him, I understand why you're angry, but what you think has happened hasn't happened. Listen to him. So eventually he calms down and he listens to the rugby tackler. What the striker hadn't realized was that in the defensive team, there was this rather large student with clumsy feet, who in his excitement to get over and stop the striker, bumped into the rugby tackler, who was rather small in stature, giving him no option but to bounce off this larger student and do what looked like a rugby tackle to the striker. No fault of his own. Miscommunications and misunderstandings are the cause of most arguments. I understand that it is hard to, in the heat of the moment, stop and listen and let people finish. It is hard to, in the heat of the moment, slow down and think carefully about what we're saying, how we're saying it, so that we can articulate our thoughts effectively. But it is vital. It is vital because if we communicate effectively, then we gain a better understanding of each other. And if we understand each other more, then we misunderstand each other less. Sometimes we choose not to communicate effectively because we're thinking of our short-term happiness. We'd rather avoid the conflict now. But then the problem builds and it affects our long-term happiness. Think of a football team. If a football team were to step on the pitch and every player was to think of their short-term happiness, they'd be chasing the ball around trying to score. They'd concede over and over again. They'd lose by quite a bit. A football team steps onto the pitch with their long-term happiness, a long-term goal in mind. They have a plan in place to achieve that goal, and then they need the hard work, the determination, the patience to see that plan through. They can't give in to impulses, or they need to try not to, because impulses lead to bad decisions. The worst thing about this is that after all that planning and after all that hard work, which is the recipe for increased success or anything in life, after all that, that team is likely to lose. And this is another thing that sports teaches us. Failure is normal. Mistakes are normal. In a league of 20 teams, one team will win the league and 19 teams will lose. From the quarterfinals to the finals of a tournament, 7 teams will lose, 1 team will win. In the Premier League in the last 20 years, 6 teams have won the league, which means that 14 teams have lost the league over and over again for 20 years. Failure is normal. Nowadays, we seem to be accidentally normalizing success in society, especially with things like social media. Everyone posts pictures of their successes or their children's successes. This is creating this false normality around success, which is putting a pressure on people to succeed. But this is dangerous because it's becoming a need to avoid failure. We and our children rather choose the easy situation where we know we will succeed instead of choosing the difficult situation where we're more likely to fail, but much more likely to learn, improve, and grow as people. And this is dangerous because to be successful or to increase our chance of success at anything, we need to have experience and competence. And if we have this need to avoid failure, then we're not putting ourselves in situations to experience things, and therefore we're not becoming more competent at them. And I understand that it is hard to see somebody upset. It's hard to be the person who's upset going through a difficult situation. But with effective communication, the advice that we give or that we're given in these moments can build resilience, because we can gain an understanding that we can learn and improve from these moments. And not just build resilience, but build courage. Because once we understand that we can learn and improve from these moments, we will actively seek out these difficult moments, these difficult situations, knowing that these are the situations where we are going to grow most. That gives us the best chance of success. Maybe we need to start taking more pictures of our failures and our children's failures, posting those too on social media. Maybe we could caption them with the advice that we were given or that we gave in those moments. Maybe this would lead to us developing a mentality similar to that of a sports person, where we don't just value the final outcome as success or achievement, but we value also the learning and improving as achievement. Achievement leads to the release of serotonin and dopamine in our bodies, which are the happiness chemicals. So, if we value learning and improving as achievement and constantly seek out these difficult situations where we can learn and improve, then maybe that's how we lead happier, more fulfilling lives. I hope I've started to show that there's many more things we can learn from sports than what meets the eye. I just want to leave with this thought. What if we, as a society, took on the mentality of a successful sports team? What if we, as individuals within that society, instead of trying to change the world around us, we instead genuinely focused on being the best versions of ourselves? And in doing that, we genuinely focused on helping the people around us be the best versions of themselves. Then maybe we wouldn't need to try and change the world, because it wouldn't need changing. I really appreciate you listening to me. Thank you very much.